I'm on mute. The recording has started, and this is the June 2nd, 2022 Crossplane community meeting. Folks, feel free to continue adding yourself to the attendees list and also to agenda items into the agenda here. If you have any that you want to discuss, I'll go ahead and drop into the chat now, the Zoom chat here, a direct link to the agenda document. So if you're not in there, then you can hop on in now and add any suggestions that you want. So we'll go ahead and start here as usual with recent milestones and releases. So we did during KubeCon, right? It was the Tuesday of KubeCon in Valencia. We did the 1.8 release. So that was after the last community meeting. So that is a new thing. So a couple of fixes and improvements that were in from the general community are included here. You can read about them in the release notes. And also wanted to call out some of the first-time contributors to this repo. Bob, I know you've been contributing in a bunch of different repos, but it looks like this was your first contribution to core Crossplane as well. So thanks for that. Definitely appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Right on. Cool. So yeah, so the release notes can be read about here. So that was the minor release, the 1.8. We also did a set of patches as well. So the versions of Crossplane that are under active maintenance right now are the last three. That's the typical policy. So 1.8, 1.7, and 1.6 all got a series of patch releases to fix a panic issue that was happening with a logger that had some invalid arguments. So that got fixed and merged and then released as these three patch releases right here. So we've done the 1.8 release and then a series of 3 patches to the 3 most recent Crossplane versions since the last community meeting. So we're kind of early, since we just did 1.8, we're kind of early in the cycle for 1.9. With the typical release cadence of every 8 weeks, that puts the next release, it's the July 12th timeframe. I don't think we've done a whole lot of thinking right now about what would be included and what the main focuses are. So we're kind of early on that. But we can kind of listen to some priorities today while we're talking about it. So we got about a weekend or so. So we've got a number of weeks left in it. I started just today a project board and carried over some things from 1.8 that oh, that's odd. Moffat, can you access this link? I wonder if
1.9, let me.
Yeah, it's the project 19. I wonder if I didn't set the visibility on it correctly. Let me see if I can fix that real quick and with a logged in account. Sorry about that delay here.
I am able to see it, but it seems like it's private.
Yeah, could you set that to public real quick? I must have clicked the wrong button. That should totally be a public thing. I think the default visibility with GitHub is private. It must be.
Let me see. No, I do not have sufficient permissions.
Okay.
And you seem to be an admin that can do that. So there is this at the right, you see menu button, and then 3 dots. I clicked and settings.
Oh, got it. Yeah, and they kind of hide that. Public
Yeah.
save. Okay, that should be good now. So let me get back into it again. There we go. Cool. So yeah, so I just added a couple of the issues on here that are ongoing priorities and that there are, there's outstanding work on. So there's a couple of things that are being invested in the Crossplane runtime, the core there that powers all the rest of the functionality in Crossplane. So I know this has been a frequently requested issue from another number of community folks, and there's an ongoing pull request for it that Sergen is still driving. So I think this would be something that should be included into the 1.9 timeframe. Custom compositions is an ongoing effort as well. Sergen and Nick have been investing in that over a number of weeks now. So that'll still be a general focus for continuing to drive that functionality from the POC stage to something that's more ready for general consumption. And then I think there's an ongoing pull request as well for general patching from common data sources. That's a highly requested feature in general for Crossplane. So I think all those will be getting some will be getting some attention in the 1.9 timeframe. Are there other things that are like priorities or desires from the community like that we should be thinking about for the 1.9 timeframe as we're getting off the ground and getting moving with it now?
Custom compositions is certainly something that I think is going to be more and more important. That and probably the composition, the revisions, composite composition version, something like that. Basically, the life cycle, the life cycle of the composition. So.
Yeah, and the composition revisions have been in alpha so far with their initial functionality, and so Bob, there were specific functionality or features within the composition revisions that you're looking to see as they continue to get matured.
I'm real early in my study of the revisions. We're just at the point where we're starting to get things deployed, and we're not quite yet to the point where people say, okay, that's great. Now what can you do with it? But I know that's coming. So, we personally need to start doing some thinking around what does it mean to evolve something once it's deployed. And I'm just, we're using like compositions of compositions of compositions, and, trying to decide what is a composition revision. Is it, can you migrate the lower nested pieces without necessarily migrating the upper levels and that kind of thing? So.
Yeah, it's some really good questions about the life cycle of compositions and how they evolve and iterate on them over time. And so, Bob, it wouldn't surprise me at all as you're going down that path that you're going to have some good feedback on, either missing functionality or, the way that things should be approached there for environments such as yours. So if you run into things, with what is out there right now for composition revisions that, you want to provide some feedback on, I definitely encourage you to give us some ideas on that, and that'll help shape some of the future of it too, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're going to start
getting feedback on a lot of stuff so far.
Thanks. Yeah, we're going to start getting into that a little bit more in the next few weeks or months. So we'll see what we can find.
Awesome. That's great, Bob. Cool. So yeah, early in the 1.9 timeframe, but we got the release dates, set there for the typical cadence, and we can keep the 1.9 board up to date as we're moving along through the cycle here. Cool. So we can move along, I think, to providers then. I wanted to definitely call out that all the providers have been moved from the core Crossplane organization to the Crossplane contrib org. So that's as part of the recent charter updates. Providers, we have a neutral home for collaboration and folks working together on these community providers. So the details about that can be found in this issue here, and then that has been executed so that these providers have been moved to their new homes in the Crossplane contrib repo. All the CI and publishing of builds and everything has been updated, so I believe all of that should result in usable builds, and everything should be working still. If there's any issues with folks have with consuming or contributing to or anything with these providers now that they've moved to their new home in the Crossplane contrib organization, do let us know so we can get that fixed and make sure that there's not a lapse in these providers that folks are depending on. Okay. And then for recent releases from providers, the one I was thinking of immediately is there's a 0.19 release for provider Azure here, which we can see the release notes on that is since the last community meeting. So I just left a link to the release notes here so folks can dive in and dig into that. There's a few new resources that were added and a couple of updates and fixes for some key scenarios there. Were there other recent updates recent releases for other providers in the community that folks want to call out? There's a number of providers out there. I wanted to make sure that if there's recent releases that folks have done that they get called out here to get a little noise on them.
There's provider AWS release that I am going to cut today.
Oh, right, the 28.28 release.
Yeah.
All right, provider AWS v0.28.0 should be released today. Cool. So yeah, no release notes then yet, huh, Moffick?
Yeah, it's. I think its deadline was yesterday, but yeah, I just noticed it today and took the issue.
Cool. Sounds good. Any other releases of other providers recently that folks want to call out? All right. We'll continue to have this space in the community meeting for folks to talk about developments of providers and new releases and things like that. So this space will be continue to be open in subsequent community meetings. Okay, sweet. So I guess we can jump into community topics now also. So there was, like, typically in the content section here, I like to call out, all sorts of blog posts and videos and, all sorts of stuff that is happening within the Crossplane ecosystem and, folks adopting it and telling their stories and what they're building, et cetera. A ton of those recent ones are all KubeCon stuff. So they're a little bit lighter this time on like blog posts and other videos and such, because, basically everything in the last couple of weeks has been all about KubeCon. So I think this will be a good section maybe to directly link to the KubeCon talks that focused on Crossplane in Valencia. I think there were like something like 8 or 9 or so talks that were talking about Crossplane and the various things that folks are building with it, and some of the internal details as well. So I think there's a whole bunch of super interesting content to dive into now that those talks have been released and published by the CNCF. So we'll add some links to this section of the agenda here to that specifically link to all of the talks. And feel free, folks, to, if you had a talk there, to go ahead and add a link directly to the video in the agenda doc. And we can crowdsource that effort a little bit. All right. During the KubeCon timeframe, I think there is not a whole lot to report on with custom compositions. The design updates are still being updated in this pull request here with ongoing thoughts, results of POCs, lessons we're learning, et cetera. It's a pretty complex feature and a lot of moving parts in it. So you can follow along with some of the updates on that pull request that Nick and Sergen are keeping up to date. I don't think either of them are on the call today to get more details, but yeah, you can subscribe to this here and dig in and catch up with some of the updates there. So a lot of folks were in Valencia. It was really cool to meet some of you all and spend some time together in person. I wanted to hear from some folks that were there and participating in either the talks or being being at the being at the Crossplane booth, or just being around in general in the ecosystem. Did anybody want to share some of their observations or experiences from being at KubeCon? Anything to share?
Yeah, I would highly suggest, going through the talks about Crossplane and specifically, I think I've seen a few tweets about the talk that Alper gave, the CRDs that broke the camel's back. So that's a refreshing talk about how CRDs work and how upstream handles it. And yeah, if you want to build a Crossplane provider, I and Hassan, we have a tutorial format in 90 minutes, and then there is the maintainer session with Yuri, Jared, Steven, and Christopher R. So definitely check that out as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's all different levels of content for folks to be checking out, right? Because just in the maintainer track talk, there's an introduction to Crossplane for people that aren't even familiar with the project, and then there's a bit more of a deep dive into some of the internals and specifics as well, just within that talk. And then, yeah, you've got talks like Alper of, how we essentially broke the API server with like scaling, and the load from a number of CRDs we're installing, et cetera. That goes into some really deep details about more upstream Kubernetes stuff and the API server and etcd and performance and stuff like that. So a whole bunch of really, really cool content there. One of the things that I was kind of surprised about at KubeCon is the conference organizers were talking about how it's like 70% of the attendees, it was their very first KubeCon ever. And so that made me think that like, oh my gosh, there's like a lot of people here that are just getting started, like that aren't super familiar with what's going on in the Kubernetes landscape. But I didn't find that to be the case, actually, because I think that statistic is perhaps a bit misleading because, we haven't really had a lot of KubeCon opportunities to visit in the last 2 years. So I think people have been adopting cloud native technologies and using CNCF projects and building, running their workloads on Kubernetes, et cetera, for a couple of years, but just haven't been to a KubeCon yet. So you've got 70% of people that are there that's their first KubeCon, but like they're already building stuff. They already are absorbed and involved into the ecosystem. So there's a lot more expertise at the conference than you might have expected from 70% being first timers. So that was kind of interesting to see. And it showed in a lot of the conversations that we were having too, just a lot of people, a lot of expertise, a lot of experience. And it was really cool to share that with folks. So hopefully we'll be able to see some more people at the next KubeCon as well, the North America one that's in Detroit. I'm hoping to be there myself as well, and get to see people. And I guess that's a good reminder too, is that the CFP, the call for proposals for KubeCon North America, the deadline is tomorrow, Friday, June 3rd, I think probably midnight Pacific time. Don't quote me on that one, but that's what it typically is. And so if anybody wants to submit a talk about Crossplane or integrations with the rest of like other projects in the ecosystem or anything like that, I am happy to personally review and give feedback on people's proposals. So you can just directly reach out to me, send me a DM or whatever. And I'll be happy to review your proposal if you want to submit one for KubeCon North America.
Is that Detroit?
Yep, Detroit. Each KubeCon has its own local flavor. Detroit will have its own local flavor as well. It'd be cool. I haven't been to that city in a while. Last time I went was for a Red Wings game, and that was pretty sweet. I had a very good time. Detroit's pretty tight. All right. So yeah, that's everything for KubeCon then. So the next agenda item that I see is about this pull request here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up on the screen, and we can take a quick look see here as well.
So I added this to the agenda. This is not actually my pull request, it's a coworker of mine. And I'm just kind of interested in to hear is there anything additional that we can add, or any steps that we can take to help push this forward?
Yes, good question. Let me see if there is. Okay, I guess it hasn't really gotten much like feedback on it at all yet, right? So that's kind of the first step.
Yeah, less about the actual content of the PR, more just about the process of how we're going about it, what we can do differently, maybe.
Yeah. So I think, like everything here looks to be pretty reasonable in terms of what it's covering and what it's like describing the content and how it's been tested, et cetera. So I think like in general, with pull requests across a number of different providers, some providers get more attention than other ones do. Like provider AWS has a whole lot of folks looking at it and traction and continuous updates to it, et cetera. So GCP maybe is a little bit less than AWS. So yeah, sorry that this has fallen through the cracks here, but we can, I don't think there's anything about the approach here that is preventing it from getting traction. I think it's more of just community members and maintainers, spread out across a number of different providers, and this one hasn't gotten attention yet.
Cool. No, that's great. Yeah, I understand also KubeCon, as you said,
yeah,
very busy. So yeah, just thanks for that. Cool.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Definitely appreciate it, and that's
sure.
totally reasonable to follow up and ask for more engagement on these type of things. So thanks for doing that.
Great. Hopefully I'll be able to convince the author to to come to the next meeting.
Great, great, great. Okay, let me, looks like there's some more topics being added here. Let's go ahead and bring this one up too for Bob.
Yeah, so this one was driven by a problem we have in the Terraform provider, where basically if if Terraform is running when the provider restarts for any reason, like an upgrade or whatever, it leaves a mess behind, and basically locks up the it locks up the workspace so that it can't do any more work without some manual intervention. This was just one idea I had to basically make it generically possible to put post start and pre-stop hooks in. I know there was a suggestion to maybe do something in the provider itself, and I'm just kind of looking for maybe some pointers on how to catch signals, in the provider itself, and then do something, because I'm not a Go expert by any stretch of the imagination, and so I was just looking for some ideas on the best way to catch the terminate signal so that we can cleanly shut down the Terraform CLI commands before the pod goes away.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense, Bob. Like what the like scenario is here. Muafik, do you have some opinions you can share about like general approach here for being able to deal with lifecycle events for the providers?
Yeah, I think like we do handle this state in different ways in IntelliJet. But that is because we kind of hide away a lot of Terraform details. You wouldn't even know if it's running Terraform or not behind the scenes. But in this case, Terraform is exposed to the users in the provider Terraform. So it's a little bit more challenging to play with TF state or parameters file, etc. I think I haven't looked into this specific PR yet, but one thing that comes to my mind is to use change provider Terraform to use something like secret as their backend, so that because Terraform natively knows how to work with secret, because it's a valid state store as far as I remember.
Yeah, that's actually what it's using today. And the issue is that when you kill Terraform while it's using the Kubernetes backend, it leaves the lease. So it uses a lease as a locking mechanism, right? To only allow one Terraform process to access the TF state at a time. And when you kill Terraform, non-gracefully, while it has that lease, it leaves the holder identity in the lease. And so you have to go in and manually edit the lease to get it back working again.
So yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Well, one thing that we do in IntelliJet that might be applicable in that sense is that we say, because we save state in different in a CD, in the custom resource and for sensitive information in the secret, we tell it to not hold the lease essentially, so that even if you kill Terraform, workspace is gone and there is no file system at all, we are able to reconstruct the TF state and keep working. So maybe yeah, we can experiment with that option, seeing how essentially automating what you're doing manually, right? You're automating your intervention. What you do is essentially remove the lease. So if removing the lease is always the option, is always the viable option. Like, maybe we can even just tell it not to do that.
Yeah, I'm just curious how that would work with multi-threading in the provider. If the provider can be guaranteed to never be trying to use the same workspace twice, then that would be fine.
Yeah, that is like, something that I don't really know regarding provider Terraform, like, how it manages workspaces. Because, like, normally when you use like a Terraform CLI, like it has certain, like, restrictions, right? Like you can't lose TF state. The workspace folder is important, and, like, there is this whole backend story around it.
Right.
So, like, as I said, like with Terrajet, we use only, like, specific flow of execution. That's why we're kind of, like, more liberate, well, whatever, like, we do with Terraform. But in provider Terraform, this is less possible. So I need to, like, look into code. And to be clear, like, I haven't been in the provider Terraform code base. So that's why I'm just, like, trying to see, like, which options would be available. But yeah.
Yeah, but lifecycle hooks like a generic mechanism that Bob is incorporating with this PR into Crossplane. It seems reasonable, like to add this ability to hook into a pod lifecycle. It will be a controller pod, even if it's not specific to provider Terraform. It seems to be a reasonable functionality.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. I mean, I haven't read through. I'm just, like, like, for example, if there is a way to make provider Terraform work without this, then that would be preferable. But if not, like, let's do that.
This is a design feature of Terraform such that if an apply is interrupted, the state is not reliable. And it is actually a decision by Terraform to force users to go and manually remove the lock after ensuring that the state is even recoverable, that they haven't been left in a condition where their infrastructure will get stomped on. I don't know that you want to automatically clear that lock and just try to reapply, because you're losing the guarantee. Your Terraform could then keep making changes against a corrupted state that would be invalidated. It might be worth considering that this is accurate signal to the end users of this provider that, hey, your state needs to be looked at, and you need to confirm that your environment is in a place where if you rerun the apply, you're not going to be, further damaging or somehow corrupting what you think what you think you're trying to get out there.
Yeah, I mean, in this specific scenario, at least from what I've read, right, if you send Terraform a SIG-HUP signal 1 while it's running, it is supposed to cleanly shut itself down and release the lock and leave the state sane. So that's what I'm really trying to do. Is I'm really trying to, the pod's going away, like it or not, right? Kubernetes is not going to keep the pod around. So I really just want to be able to send a signal HUP to the running Terraform processes and get them to shut themselves down cleanly. In the deployments that we're planning and the scale that we're going to be working on, there's just no way we're going to be able to handle these issues, manually. Obviously, we want to move away from provider Terraform as much as we can, but there's always going to be something left behind.
Well, and you're always going to be in a case where Terraform might not be able to clean up in the 60 seconds that it has. Like even a lifecycle hook, if a pod is receiving a termination signal because a node is being preempted or something, you have a limited amount of time for Terraform to even try to clean itself up. And if its cleanup procedures take longer than that, you're still going to wind up with the least not cleaned, because the pod will get killed and removed even whether Terraform has finished its work or not.
Right. I mean, we could always extend the timer if we needed to, but
yeah.
I'm just kind of looking for low-hanging fruit, right?
I was under the impression there are situations where you have no. As I understand it, there are situations where you have no control over that timer. Like, I'll send you a SIG-HUP 60 seconds before I kill the pod, but I am going to kill the pod.
Yeah, I mean, there are configuration options in Kubernetes that will let you adjust that timer. I don't know what. I mean, obviously, there's got to be an upper limit. Obviously, there's scenarios where the worker goes away and there is no timer, right? It's just gone. And so, and maybe this is just an artifact of the fact that we're running a COI command in the background, and there's always going to be some level of instability. So.
Yeah, and it would be also pretty maybe useful in like the general sense here to get Dan's opinion on like adding this to controller config. I know there's been some thoughts about in like a general way of like of how we approach controller config, and I think there's an issue for it. We'll have to look and see and find that issue, but see if there's something that makes sense to kind of approach this in a holistic way of general controller configs design concerns. But like that's one thing to consider. But in general, or not in general, specifically, like this doesn't seem like a large departure from some of the other things like the environment variables and things that are part of controller config already. So it doesn't seem like this is like a poor, immediately obvious, like a poor fit for the general config we're capturing. So that's a good thing, Bob.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So we'll have to follow up on that. But yeah, that's my initial gut feel, at least on it. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for bringing this up, Bob, and thanks for continuing to contribute and driving ideas into the project too, man.
It's my pleasure.
And was this the same thing here, Bob?
Yeah, I added it in two places by mistake. So
okay, got it. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and delete that then, since we talked about it there. Cool. So that was everything that was on the agenda doc. Are there anything else that folks want to go ahead and add in now before we adjourn? All right, going once. All right, then if that's everything, we can go ahead and adjourn. We'll keep moving forward on the 1.9 release cycle, and we'll be talking on Slack and such in the meantime, and see everybody here in 2 weeks, the next meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, good to see everybody. Bye.
Very interesting. Thank you.